Hey everybody, how's it going? Well, my name is Carpo, for those who don't know already, and this message is to young males or old males. But, you know, if you're a female, please feel free to join along and listen as well, because even though I'm trying to reach young men, it's not because I'm trying to lead young men by any means, but I feel like the better we understand each other, the better chance we have of just having civil fucking conversations, you know? Now, I think one of the beautiful things is that on YouTube I don't use ads, so I don't have to worry about demonetization for talking about certain subjects. And because of that, I figure I'm obligated to. But because I made part one of this and claimed it was part one, you know, when I actually finished it, I didn't really intend on it being part one, but rather a finished video. And then I thought, you know, I have so many more things to talk about. And so I'm going to try to cover those in this video. I've been kind of pacing for an hour trying to figure out how to start this. It's like, you know, what right do I have? Not what right do I have, but rather what point is there to even make a video talking about what it means to be a man? But because I've talked to so many young men who have a flawed image of what men are and what being a man is, and this is multifaceted. I mean, the media has, in commercials, have thrown this crap at us about what being a man is. And believe me, you know, I grew up in the 80s, but we had the same bullshit, you know. Before the internet, of course, we just had commercials, but it was, you know, Gillette and, you know, everything that was shown to us on television was this false narrative of what men and women really look like and how men and women really act. And then we move into the future, into these reality TV shows where it shows these spoiled brats and you know, basically celebrity yuppies complaining about, you know, first world problems and bullshit that is only done for the camera. But the fact that people build up this resentment towards those who seem to have it easy with relationships. And what I would like to say is that doesn't exist. There are no people who, you know, the INCEL groups have this idea that there are Chads and Beckys, these really good looking guys and these really hot women who have these amazing relationships. And maybe that's true sometimes. But let's just say that, you know, for argument's sake, that maybe those relationships don't last as long as we might think they do. And maybe when these Chads get out of high school and they're no longer the popular football star, then all of a sudden they kind of fade into obscurity. And just maybe the nerds like you and I, who in school had bad acne and were awkward and strange, might run into these people later in life and think, wow, what a loser. And that's what you have to remember. If you're a young male who is afraid that, you know, everyone around you is getting laid and, you know, you have a really kind of a grim image of the reality of what's important in life. Sex is not that important. Relationships are not that important. You have a lot of life ahead of you. Now, one thing I didn't mention in the previous video was the MGTOW movement, or the men going their own way. And it was funny because I actually had that in the title of the previous video, but I removed it because I was like, well, I hadn't really mentioned that group. And then somebody pointed it out in the comment section, and we discussed it a little bit. It was men going their own way, and I said, well, you know, the thing is, if you're going your own way, you shouldn't have to even mention it. You know, but the MGTOW movement is men who basically have already been wronged by women, such as maybe men who have had a bad divorce where the woman took the kids, or they've seen the dark side of what women can do. And let me say, I have no disagreement with that. Some women can be, you know, raving bitches and take everything a man has. And there are gold diggers out there. But the point is, if we're focusing on that, we're not looking at what the average person really wants out of life. They don't want to steal from each other. They don't want to rob and cheat and lie. But there are people out there who do. And there are people who use their looks to gain advantage over another person, which means we have to ask ourselves, hey, you know, what am I not looking at in this relationship? And there are so many angles I wanted to cover. I probably won't have the time to do it, but I grew up with a lot of guys, friends, who had this illusion of the perfect woman. And I've seen this before. So a lot of guys who complain that they can't get laid, or that they can't find the right relationship, or they complain about how all these hot chicks won't date them, welcome to the club, okay? Welcome to the world. I had the same problems, That's the way the world works. Some guys get hot girls, some guys don't. But the thing is, you're looking at a woman in the wrong angle. So many guys are waiting for this perfect woman. And it's like, I've met these guys in my life, and I'm like, what are you thinking? You're missing all these awesome relationships and people who want to, meet you and hang out with you and be with you, because you're waiting for this super hot model that doesn't exist. And yeah, we can blame the media and we can blame porn, but that's not 100%. It's also on the person who really takes that, who's ignorant enough to not decide to, embrace a relationship that may be beneficial to them, just because the person, they're afraid that their friends might not think she's hot enough or something. And it's a real life problem. It's sad. Well, there's also the illusion of the strong man. And I've worked for these strong men before, these guys who lifted weights, and that you have to be physically buff in order to get anything done. And look, you don't see buff old men. You can see fit old men or tone old men, but the thing is, eventually you get old. You're going to lose those muscles. If you want to build them when you're young, fine, so be it. But it doesn't make you any better than another person. And a lot of chicks don't like muscles like that. They don't like it. It's gross to them. So I'm trying to cover all these angles because, man, I wanted to make this casual, but there's so many things I wanted to talk about. The thing about it is, being a man, what it means varies by where you live, what community you're in, what culture you have, your needs and your desires. There is no standard man that fits, every need of every man. The world is different. People are different for a reason. Really, to me, if I were to try to nail it down, being a man means standing up for yourself, standing up for those you love, and being able to let other people's bullshit opinions go. And that's pretty simple, right? And the world's not going to change for us. And that's something you've got to realize. Just because you're angry at women or angry at other men, the world's not going to change because you're pissed. So if you want to complain, so be it. But it's not going to solve your problems. It's not going to help anything. All it's going to do is make you more miserable. So it seems like a victim status. If a person's aware that they're making themselves miserable and choosing to separate themselves from everyone, then, that's partially their own fault. You can't blame society for outcasting people who refuse to be part of it. But it's also a cop-out, and I think we all know that. Because being part of a society, just like being part of a relationship, is difficult. And I think that that's part of being what a man is being able to integrate. That's what integrity is, by definition. It means to integrate. And to me, that means happiness. To be a happy person, to be able to share your opinions and have a family if you choose, but to let it go when shit doesn't go your way, and to also be able to change with the times and integrate as things come your way. The guy who panics and freaks out the moment something goes wrong, that's not that's not a healthy way to be. But let's see, what else did I want to discuss? Somebody mentioned mothers, and a lot of men who had abusive mothers or neglectful mothers, and how that affects a man's view of women. And I'm only going to touch on that briefly because, yeah, it definitely has an effect, but it's not the only thing. Of course, men who have nurturing mothers maybe respect women more, but it's not always the case, and every relationship is unique. And but definitely, if a man has a poor relationship with his mother, it can make him more negative towards women. So any man who tends to hate women should really look at that and ask himself what his relationship was with his mom, or if she did neglect him or abuse him physically or mentally. But fathers do the same thing. And we have the same, anger towards certain types of men, just like women have anger towards certain men because their fathers were abusive. So what does it mean to man up? means to be able to cope with life, to be able to deal with shit. And I don't mean like, the burdens that are placed upon you to make a lot of money or be successful and wear a suit and tie. I mean, to cope with life means to be able to get by without making everything about yourself or everything about being a victim. It's about growing the fuck up. And a lot of young men out there seem to be very misguided, and they don't have the direction they need. And I don't know what we can do about that except try to help one another. And that's coming from me as a 43-year-old father of 3. I have a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 25-year-old. And I'm not going to say I'm the best parent in the world. I do my best with the tools I have and what I've learned. But my oldest son will tell you that, I try to be the best dad I can. And, that's all I can ask for in life. And so when I see other young men out there in pain that are in his age group, that are in their early 20s or late teens, it hurts me to think that these guys are misdirected. And believe me, I lost my dad when I was like 15 to cancer, watched him die basically, and it was a nightmare, Didn't really realize how bad it hit me for like, 20 years. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that kind of fucked me up, But in the meantime, I had to teach myself what it meant to be a man. But just those little glimpses, my dad taking me out hunting or shooting, taking me out hiking to the desert, he did a lot in the time he had to teach me how to respect nature. And I'm grateful for the 14 years I had with him. Instead of complaining about the time I could have, I think about the young men who don't have any fathers in their life, and just how bad it fucks you up not to have any fatherly advice or a father figure. And that's why people just yearn for people like Jordan Peterson, who, I didn't really want to get into that, his 12 rules of life, and, I found them kind of very oversimplified. Some of these 12 rules of life, one of them was to set your house in perfect order before you can, criticize the world. I find that bullshit, because nobody's house is ever in perfect order, and we all have the right to criticize the world when we see something that's wrong. That one was dumb alone. Another one is don't bother kids when they're skateboarding, and one of these other 12 rules was pet a cat when you're walking down the street. These are just kind of shallow, just bullshit filler kind of things, and that's my opinion on it. But I'm not dissing Jordan Peterson, because I've listened to a lot of his stuff, and sure, he has some good things to say, but a lot of it's just blah, 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 in my opinion. In other words, it's not really relatable to me. I don't feel like I can relate to him or his life, but I also don't feel like he's teaching me anything new when I listen. So, but I don't want to get into that. It's funny. He got famous over this whole free speech thing, where he didn't want speech infringed. But since then, he's filed 2 lawsuits against other people for defamation of character, because they called him a name. And this big circle of big heroes. In other words, young men are looking up to other men, and I'm not going to diss anybody individually, because I'm just as much of a douchebag as the next guy, right? I only know what I know. I can only share what I share, and the people that want to hear it will listen, and those who don't, just, they don't, and that's fine. I'm totally cool with that. That's life. But if everyone agreed with me, I'd know there's something wrong, because I've got a lot of views that I need to change over time too. So anyhow, to try to get this summed up, man up to means to cope with life and deal with things the way they are. Not try to, not complain about the way we wish things were. We can try to change things, but we also need to learn to see other people's perspectives and understand where other people are coming from. Some guys are so delusional they will bring you down with them. And these are the kind of guys who end up being the leaders of these chat groups, often, not always. Sometimes people are just misdirected and misguided, but there are a lot of people out there who have a serious hatred towards, say, women. But it gets crazy, because men, this is what I've learned, a lot of men fear an outspoken woman, an independent woman. And I realize why the feminism movement is hated, because of the 1 or 2% of people who identify as feminists who are actually just outrageous bitches who scream and rant on the corner and make everybody else feel like shit, call everybody a misogynist, and they're basically like the female version of MGTOW. They've had bad relationships or bad situations, so they're going to take it out on the world and scream at everybody, and all men are evil. And then men rebel with this, well, no, all women are evil. And it goes back and forth, and it's like, you people fucking wake up. We're all humans. Though I'd just like to say a few things about having a relationship. First off, it takes sacrifice and time. There are a lot of guys who want to rule and control a relationship. And then there are a lot of females who want to rule and control a relationship. And when it doesn't work out, they want to blame the other sex and the entire other sex for it. Oversimplifying what men and women are. Well, all men are pigs. Well, all women are gold diggers. And it's just ludicrous. Love takes sacrifice and time. I've been with my wife for almost 21 years. This December. 21 years. We've been married for, I think, almost, 7 years, but we've been together for 21 years and lived together for most of it. And that takes a lot of work. We're a lot alike. We're both deadheads. We both enjoy life. We get along well. We're both mellow. We both we're similar in a lot of ways, but also it's not like we agree on everything. When we disagree, sometimes we might whatever, but we never fight and scream at one another, because between me and her, it's a relationship that is based on trust and mutual connection. You can't always find that with people, but it takes work from both people. And so a lot of the guys who complain about women not listening or not doing what they wanted, a lot of these guys actually are just control freaks. There's a ton of them out there. But there's a lot of women like that too. And that's what I'm getting at. If you're against, and there's a lot of guys out there who are stuck on looks, like I said, and they have these high standards, and they think women have to look a certain way and be a certain way, and then they complain because they can't get laid from the woman they want. And these aren't the ones I'm talking about. A lot of these guys, if you're out there and you're one of those guys, maybe you need to change your standards, because your perspective of reality is probably based on what you've seen on television. And, there's probably a woman out there who is just right for you, or a man, or whatever it is. If you just get past the whole looks thing, it has to be this. But before I go on that, looks are hugely important on how we choose a mate. I understand that too. But we can be very biased about it. We all feel unworthy at times, okay? We all feel like awkward around people. To this day, I even sometimes feel awkward around my wife. I feel awkward around other people that I even know and that I've known for a long time. And, I think it's just natural that when you're young, you think you're the only one who feels that way, but you're not. You're not. So we get this delusion that we're missing out on something, that there's all this hot sex going on between Chads and Stacys, and that we're missing something, and that we're just these losers. But you look back, dude, if you're 19, 20, 21, even 25, dude, you got a long fucking way to go. Don't start looking at your life like you've missed out. If you avoided sex through your teen years, you've probably done yourself a favor, And I know it doesn't seem that way right now, but it's just how I feel. Men and women both suck, yo. It's just how it is. I mean, we all have problems, but dealing with relationships when you're young is just so much more complicated. But here's the thing. When you turn on half the population, women, you're also turning on the Chads, right? You're turning on the men. At least, a huge population of the men. And any man who doesn't identify as an incel. So isn't that just kind of an escape? Isn't that a way to say, I don't want to deal with anybody else's version of reality or being a man. I just want to sit here and chat about it and complain. You've got to get out there in the world and make an effort. And that's hard because we get stuck in our ways, we get stuck in our routines, and it becomes difficult. But don't give up. We're all awkward. I feel awkward right now even talking about it. Even though I've made, thousands of videos and talked about every subject, I still feel weird talking about it. Like I said, I don't know, what is a man? It's being able to stand up for your family and protect your interests, whatever that requires. And A lot of folks would say I've been lucky, and I'd like to say because I've been with my wife for so long and it's been successful. As I said before, it's work, and no, there's a little luck involved, sure, but there's a lot of work involved, and I think it's bullshit when people say, well, so-and-so was just lucky, he just found the right woman. No, it takes recognition and awareness. It takes looking at signs. If you're with somebody and you see the signs, the red flags, and you stick in a relationship like so many people do, and decide to get married anyway after a month or something, yeah, you fucked up. You made a bad decision. We make mistakes, but we move on from them. Fortunately, I didn't have a lot of relationships when I was young, but when I met my wife, it took her months to get me to even really ask her out, and I think she ended up asking me out because I was just awkward, and I felt weird around girls. I always did, but I'm glad she did because it was the best thing that happened to me. And I was about 23. So when I hear 20-year-olds saying they can't find love, I'm like, dude, the internet has confused you into thinking that matters. It doesn't. You'll find love when love is there for you, but don't base your relationships and your opinion of women on the girls that you met in high school. It's absolutely absurd. They're growing up too. Man, you all are just getting pubes. I mean, think about it. It's the hormones calm down, reason kicks in, and as you get older, you can kind of look back and laugh and even find somebody who's just as awkward as you might be, right? So, like I say, all men, different types of men, different goals, different dreams, interests. Being a man varies on who you are and what your needs are. And the guys who tell you what a man should be, the men's man, pull out their hunting knife. Oh, this is my bear killer. No, I've had that for years. I was going to use it as a prop, as a joke in the video, but the guys who are into weapons or killing or whatever it might be to try to be a man, it's just a misguided understanding, trying to find something within yourself. If that works for you, so be it, but eventually you get old and you're stuck with your thoughts and yourself. And so the guys who are telling you what manly man is just don't get it. And like feminism, I'm only going to briefly say that feminism is a response to women feeling suppressed for so long, oppressed for so long, and it's a natural response. But there are extreme feminists who make the rest of them look bad, and therefore there's a direct response by these men who get angry, and there's a small part of the population who rebels back and forth and make everybody think that everyone's crazy. Most people aren't that nuts, even though there's a lot of fucking idiots out there. So basically, just don't overreact to other people's opinions. People are only going to resist more if you try to oppress or suppress free speech. If you try to hold them back from saying what they feel or what they want, they're only going to say it louder and over different channels. And we're seeing this. We're growing up. I feel like we're all growing up today, but together. But we do oversimplify this idea of what races, racial relationships, fathers, what it means to be a mother, what a family is, and then there's this one aspect to touch on, of course: let men be men. A lot of women think that the men have to be these effeminate, metrosexual. I mean, I went through this whole transition when we were told to be more feminine, embrace your feminine side, and I always have, but watching it, unfold, like there's a perfect South Park episode about that. But anyhow, eventually then you find that, oh wait, no, women actually like a man who can stand up for himself, a tough guy. And then men get mixed signals, they get confused, and then they're like, what the hell do women want? Well, it depends on the woman, and it depends on the man. And so you find what works for you. But one aspect to leave on is you got to learn to talk to women properly. You can't just show up at some job interview like my son was saying. He was with a group of people. They were doing job training, and this guy was hitting on this girl in the group, and he left her a note like, "You're hot." No, you can't be a creep. You can't be a weirdo. And there's a fine line between being a creep and flirting. And unfortunately, a lot of young men don't understand that. And you'll figure it out as time goes on. But, I never left creepy notes for women or like whistled at them or acted awkward. I just acted like a human being and talked to them. And maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't. But you're not owed anything as a man. And for the guys out there who think that they are owed something just for being a man, or that they have some sort of alpha or omega role to play, you're full of shit. And none of that really matters. You can go to being an alpha overnight with the mind change. It's all in here. You know, the human psyche, we've overridden that whole alpha urge with our ability to reason through things and to be tougher. Believe me, I'm a sensitive guy. But if you cross me, I'll fuck you up. I will not hesitate to defend my family or anyone else or myself. And that's, I think, what being a man is, and that's my opinion on it. So, probably turned into a long video, but I hope I got it all across, all the things I wanted to say. Just to say, we all feel a little unworthy and awkward at times, and it's okay. It's just being human. Gotta get over it, gotta move forward, and make the best of it. So, thanks for listening, and as always, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know what you think, and I appreciate you listening. I just feel like it's important that men realize that being a man is not something that's defined on paper or something that's defined by memes or a passing fancy of society. Something that's defined by endurance through time. So, or whatever you want it to be. Take care. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Peace.